such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a movie review. This week, The Flash, a DC superhero movie that was first announced by Warner Brothers in 2014, is finally here. A movie that took so many years to complete that during its 9-year production window, several creative executives, directors, producers, actors, and a rumored 45 writers at some point came and left the project. A movie that managed to survive multiple Hollywood trends, corporate regime changes, as well as a strange and unexpected international illness. And if all of that wasn't enough, during this time period, the movie's lead star has also had ongoing troubles with the law. But now that the movie is being released, there's only one question that really matters. Is this movie any good? Unfortunately, after all this time and in spite of the recent marketing hype surrounding it, I would have to say that the answer to that is no. I don't think it's good at all. In fact, I think this movie is absolutely awful, and in this video, I will explain why. In the Flash movie, Barry Allen goes back in time to save his mother from being murdered, only for him to cause a ripple effect within the multiverse, messing up time, space, and even the existence of people that he knows. In a now altered reality, General Zod is never stopped by Superman as he was in Zack Snyder's movie Man of Steel, so Barry must recruit a makeshift version of the Justice League that includes Michael Keaton as Batman, a younger Barry Allen as another Flash, and Sasha Calle as Supergirl. All of this leads to a big battle and a lackluster ending, which we will discuss later in this video. Here are the 5 main reasons why this movie doesn't work at all. Number 1. Cast issues. Putting all of Miller's legal problems aside and giving a purely professional opinion, I have to say that from day one, I've never liked this casting for the Flash character. I didn't like it when we were introduced to the character in Joss Whedon's version of the Justice League. I didn't like it in Zack Snyder's version of the Justice League, and in the Flash movie, it works for me even less. Acting-wise, Ezra Miller is probably okay as some sort of character actor in a quirky or dramatic indie movie, but not the right fit for this role at all. As lead actor, Miller's performance here comes off as especially annoying, and since we have 2 Ezra Millers on screen for a big portion of the movie, it becomes even more difficult to watch. I suppose in a few of the more dramatic scenes, Miller is slightly more competent, but any part that involves a lighter tone or even comedy really highlights the actor's limited range and lack of suitability for this role. Although her role is rather minor in this movie, I don't think Kiersey Clemons is especially good as Iris West either. She's kind of just there, and she doesn't seem to have any chemistry whatsoever with Ezra Miller. In that sense, the CW TV series The Flash had much better casting for both the roles with Grant Gustin and Candice Patton. While the TV version actors may not have had the best material to work with on that show, if nothing else, they both at least had a rather likable presence and pretty good chemistry together. Miller and Clemons just seem awkward together, and not in a good way. The casting of Barry Allen's mom also doesn't work for me. While I wouldn't say that the actress is bad or anything, she mildly annoys me too, as she just doesn't seem like she would be Ezra Miller's version of Barry Allen's mother. Office Space alum Ron Livingston replaces Billy Crudup as Barry's father Henry from Justice League, and while I would have preferred to see Crudup in the role, I actually think Ron Livingston does an okay job in this recast. If I had to point out some bright spots in the casting, I would say that Sasha Calle isn't terrible as Supergirl, and I actually feel bad for the actress falling victim to Hollywood's virtue signaling, studio politics, and trendy agendas. I honestly believe that if Calle would have dyed her hair blonde and worn a more feminine outfit, she would have probably been a more convincing Supergirl. And I merely point this out because Supergirl is supposed to look a certain way, but I guess that way is now considered, problematic. It's funny how in the past Hollywood used to cast good-looking women for such roles and then made them look excellent on screen. These days, even when they actually cast a woman that actually does look good in real life, they immediately try to make her look shabby, masculine, give her a male haircut, and make her look like a little boy, for whatever reasons. Michael Shannon is once again good as General Zod, although he really isn't given much to do here, as he himself has recently stated in an interview where he complained about this movie. And while I like seeing Ben Affleck wearing a Frank Miller type of black and gray Batman suit, he almost seems like he doesn't even want to be in this movie, and quite frankly, I don't blame him. Gal Gadot appears very briefly in this movie, and while it's always nice to see her as Wonder Woman, I wish they would have given her more to do here. It's a shame that what will likely be her final appearance in the role is really nothing more than a very brief cameo in such a disappointing movie. In what was supposed to be his final appearance as Superman, Henry Cavill actually filmed a scene for this movie that was deleted, so we only see him in archival footage, which really sucks. Jason Momoa appears in a brief scene so ridiculous that they may as well have used archival footage for him as well. Cast-wise, if this movie has any type of redeeming quality to it, however minor, it's that we see veteran actor Michael Keaton return to the role of Batman for the first time since 1992, and if nothing else, at least the film doesn't humiliate him or anything. With that being said, if they were already bringing him back, I would have preferred to see an Elseworlds type of movie where the character is older and trying to solve one last case or something. In this movie, and this is not Keaton's fault here, he just seems to be shoehorned as a big giant nostalgic memberberry, and I think he deserved so much better. While he gets a bigger spotlight than other legacy actors that appear in this movie, and a few good fight scenes, Michael Keaton's presence here is still mostly wasted, which brings me to my next point. Number 2, the writing. While I don't necessarily dislike the existence of a multiverse within the superhero genre, I think overusing this idea also causes too many narrative problems and lowers the stakes overall. Couple that with the market oversaturation of multiverse movies in recent years, in order for this concept to have worked in The Flash, the writing would have had to have been something really special. Unfortunately, not only is the writing on this movie not anything special, I would argue that it has a very messy structure, and that it's all over the place with both story and tone. It also has so many characters shoved into it that the screenplay never really knows what to do with them. In the parts where the movie is supposed to be funny, it isn't. In the parts where it's supposed to be dramatic, the storytelling fails to set up and deliver a real emotional punch. While some of this movie's problems can probably be attributed to studio meddling, ongoing reshoots, and noticeable rewrites, this movie's writing, to me, is always subpar, even if it's seemingly ambitious at times. It simply tries to do too many different things at once, and pretty much fails to accomplish anything. As I had mentioned earlier in this video, there were rumored to be 45 different writers that have contributed to this screenplay at some point, but the lead writer of this movie is none other than Christina Hodson, who wrote the very embarrassing DC Birds of Prey movie, which barely broke even at the box office, and the Batgirl movie, which was apparently so bad that Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav ordered for all copies of it to be destroyed prior to its release so that he could use it as a tax write-off. And yes, this Flash movie certainly feels like something she served as head writer on.
But wait! There's more!
Remember Joby Harold, the head writer for Kathleen Kennedy's disgraceful Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and the guy who was head writer of the latest agenda-fueled Transformers movie? Well, he gets a story credit on this movie too because I guess he contributed some of his own ideas to it. What I can't really understand is why Hollywood continues to hire these same few writers over and over again, no matter how much money their projects lose or how poorly they're received. You know, there are real writers out there that do know how to write, and these guys have failed so badly that it even made the CW Flash's storytelling of this same Flashpoint storyline pretty good in comparison. As much as people make fun of the CW Flash TV series, myself included, those first few seasons, where it explored this exact storyline, were actually halfway decent, but please don't tell anybody I said that. Number 3, no heart. Beyond the cast and writing issues, another reason I think this movie is so crappy is that at different times, different corporate regimes wanted the movie to be something else, so it never really formed a real identity of its own, or even a good enough reason for existing. In 2014, Warner Brothers wanted to rush this movie out to be an extension of Zack Snyder's Justice League so that it could quickly compete with the Disney MCU's Avengers. But by 2017, then-boss Ann Sarnoff had abandoned Snyder's vision altogether and seemingly wanted to use this movie as a platform to promote trendy Hollywood agendas while getting rid of Snyder and some of his cast members altogether. Sarnoff's brilliant idea was that by incorporating the multiverse, the movie would be used as a soft reboot tool for the DCEU, where Henry Cavill's Superman and Ben Affleck's Batman would be replaced by two little girls. Then, in 2021, Warner Brothers, which was $50 billion in debt, merged with Discovery, and new CEO David Zaslav asked Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill to return to the DC franchise, only to then hire James Gunn to run DC, who then re-fired Cavill and Affleck along with Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I swear I couldn't make this stuff up. I guess what I'm getting at here is that a movie with so many issues across every single aspect of its production, with no clear vision, with no steady hand to guide its storytelling, ends up just feeling like a soulless, greedy corporate product with no merit whatsoever. And while this movie's poor quality may not completely be the fault of the Flash director Andy Muschietti, at least with Zack Snyder, it seemed like there was somebody in charge with a very specific vision. Admittedly, I wasn't always a big fan of Snyder's specific vision, but I would unironically watch any of his movies over The Flash any day of the week. Even Man of Steel. Number 4. The visuals. I keep hearing how Warner Brothers likely spent upward of $300 million to make and market this movie, but you wouldn't know it based on some of the CGI that appears in this movie. Everything looks like it was filmed in front of a green screen, and somehow it makes it feel so cheap. Many of the effects seem rushed and sloppy in parts, especially in the battle scenes and the 2 different Ezras. This is especially noticeable when this movie recreates and revisits scenes from Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, and boy does it do that poorly. You can accuse Zack Snyder of many things, but if nothing else, even I acknowledge that at least he has a keen eye for visuals. When this movie tries to emulate his visual style, it looks terrible, like a video game. And not even a PlayStation 5 video game, more like a PlayStation 2, maybe 3 at best. But even worse is the CGI cameos that appear in this movie, where actors' likenesses are created by some type of AI algorithm. And just to warn you, there are about to be spoilers in 3, 2, 1. So basically, as Barry is traveling through the Speed Force, he sees George Reeves as Superman, Christopher Reeve as Superman, Helen Slater as Supergirl, John Wesley Shipp as Flash, and even Nicolas Cage's version of the abandoned 1990s Superman project. Words cannot really describe how bad all of this stuff looks on screen, but I guess you'll just have to take my word for it. In fact, it looks so cheap that I felt absolutely nothing while watching it. It was less than a gimmick. And for me, the biggest offense was the use of Christopher Reeve's Superman. There's something that just doesn't feel right about the way he was injected into this movie. I think that out of all the questionable cinematic CGI revivals that have ever been done over the years, this one not only looks the worst visually, it feels very disrespectful to the late actor himself. I don't know if Reeve's family had to approve the use of his likeness in this movie, but I can't imagine them actually liking the final result. Number 5, the ending. One of the worst parts of this movie is the strange storytelling patchwork I saw throughout it, especially during its final scenes. Originally based on witness photography posted online, it seems as though the movie was supposed to end with Keaton's Batman and Calle's Supergirl still in the picture, but in the final cut, they were replaced with, spoiler alert, George Clooney, who just shows up out of left field as the movie ends. And while, surprisingly, I didn't mind seeing Clooney on screen, in spite of his poorly received 1997 Batman movie, this is obviously a change that was done very late in the game. I suppose that after Michael Keaton's Aquaman 2 appearance was removed, and the already completed Batgirl movie was physically destroyed as part of a tax write-off, Warner Brothers simply had no more use for Keaton, and since they'd already parted ways with Affleck as far as future movies go, they called up Clooney as an emergency to fill the void, perhaps with James Gunn even suggesting that they would hire Clooney for future appearances. Also, after the credits, there's a strange scene where Jason Momoa is lying drunk in a puddle. I'm still trying to figure out if it had any special meaning, but it's really hard to say at this point. I also know that prior to James Gunn's appointment, Ben Affleck filmed scenes for Aquaman 2, and now I wonder if they'll even end up being in that movie or not. Much like this movie, there is still a big mess over at DC Studios these days, and only time will tell if co-CEO James Gunn will ultimately fix it or just make it worse. At the end of the day, The Flash is a very crappy movie that was made for all of the wrong reasons, and it proves that in filmmaking, there are rarely any good workarounds when it comes to writing quality, lead casting, and creative vision. Instead of spending over $300 million on this movie, Warner Brothers could have made an Elseworld movie about Michael Keaton's Batman, and it probably would have been more profitable. They could have also made Man of Steel 2, Justice League, Wonder Woman, or even a Batfleck movie, and if budgeted correctly, they all probably would have turned a profit for them. As it stands, I would be surprised if Warner Brothers even broke even with this Flash movie, and quite honestly, I'm okay with that. Between Warner Brothers Discovery's treatment of Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, and Gal Gadot over the years, the influence they used to protect Ezra Miller from any media scrutiny, and all of their other ill-advised DC-related decisions of late, they absolutely 100% got exactly the movie that they deserved. What did you think about The Flash? Did you love it? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel, and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day!
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.